Part 1 is a reading passage of nonfiction. Read the passage, then answer the following multiple choice questions by choosing the best answer. Each question is 2 points each. This is from the 10th chapter of Plymouth Plantation by William Bradford from 1630 to 1651, showing how they sought out a place of habitation and what befell them thereabout. Being thus arrived at Cape Cod, the 11th of November, and necessity calling them to look out a place for habitation, as well as the masters and mariners' importunity, they had brought a large shallop with them out of New England, stowed in quarters in the ship. They now got her out, and set their carpenters to work to trim her up. But being much bruised and shattered in the ship with foul weather, they saw she would be long in mending. Whereupon a few of them rendered themselves to go by land and discover those nearest places, whilst the shallop was in mending. And the rather because they went into the harbor, there seemed to be an opening some 2 or 3 leagues of, which the master judged to be a river. It was conceived there might be some danger in the attempt, yet seeing them resolute, they were permitted to go, being 16 of them well armed, under the conduct of Captain Standish, having such instructions given them as was thought meet. They set forth on the 15th of November, and when they had marched about the space of a mile by the seaside, they spied 5 or 6 persons with a dog coming towards them, who were savages. But they fled from them and ran up into the woods, and the English followed them, partly to see if they could speak with them, and partly to discover if there might not be more of them lying in ambush. But the Indians, seeing themselves thus followed, they again forsook to the woods, and ran away on the sands as hard as they could, so as they could not come near them, but followed them by the tracks of their feet many miles, and saw that they had come the same way. So, night coming on, they made their rendezvous, and set out their sentinels, and rested in quiet that night. And the next morning followed their tracks till they headed a great creek, and so left the sands, and turned another way into the woods. But they still followed them by guess, hoping to find their dwellings. But they soon lost them and themselves, falling into such thickets as were ready to tear their clothes and armor in pieces, but were most distressed for want of drink. But at length they found water and refreshed themselves, being the first New England water they drunk of, and was now in their great thirst as pleasant unto them as wine or beer had been in foretimes. Afterwards they directed their course to come to the other shore, for they knew it was a neck of land they were to cross over, and so at length got to the seaside, and marched to this supposed river, and by the way found a pond of clear fresh water, and shortly after a good quantity of clear ground, when the Indians had formerly set corn and some of their graves. And proceeding further, they saw new planks, and a great kettle was remaining. They saw a new stubble where corn had been set the same year. Also they found where lately a house had been, where some planks and a great kettle was remaining, and heaps of sand newly paddled with their hands, which they digging up found in them divers fair Indian baskets filled with corn, and some in ears, fair and good, of divers colors, which seemed to them a very goodly sight, having never seen any such before. This was near the place of the supposed river they came to seek, unto which they went and found it to open itself into 2 arms with a high cliff of sand in the entrance, but more like to be creeks of salt water than any fresh, for aught they saw, and that there was good harborage for their shallop, leaving it further to be discovered by their shallop when she was ready. So their time limited being expired, they returned to the ship, lest they should be in fear of their safety, and took with them part of the corn, and buried up the rest, and so like the men from Ischol carried with them of the fruits of the land, and showed their brethren, of which, and their return, they were marvelously glad, and their hearts encouraged.